Fox pitched Wiseguy. Ended up selling something at all of those networks, but never Wiseguy. So I'd wait until somebody got fired, and I'd pitch it to the new guy, and he'd listen to me, and he'd go, I don't know, 5 hours? You really need 5 hours? So I just kept doing it because I knew there was a show there, but I needed to find the right buyer. And one afternoon, we had a new head of CBS, was named Kim LeMasters, and I go over to meet with Kim, who was an old friend of mine, and he says, what have you got for me? And I said, well, I got a really great idea, because I never tell these guys. It's been passed on by every network twice. And I pitched it to Kim, and it's no sooner is it out of my mouth, and he said, that's the coolest idea I've ever heard.
So the RD went for it, huh? He threatened to resign if you don't put you in the Steelgrave family. You want him, huh?
Yeah, I want him.
You're taking this too personal. Stan Dermott knew what he was doing. Guy's getting this racket. He wasn't your father. He was just a training officer.
Hey, Frank, do me a favor and shut up, will you?
Have it your own way.
I got together then with Frank Lupo, who had been a co-creator of mine on the A-Team and Riptide. At the time, I had about a week and a half to 2 weeks to write this, because we were at the very end of the development season. So I brought Frank in to write half the script, and I wrote the other half. Rod Holcomb, we picked to direct it. He had tremendous ideas about how to shoot the thing. Rod figured out a way to shoot the helicopter so that the rocket went past camera wherever his lens was. That was before we had CGI, so we couldn't optically do it. We had to actually do it. I don't know what we spent on the Wiseguy pilot, but it was probably around $3 million. That's roughly what I was spending for action pilots, 2-hour pilots.
I've been touched by the hand of God and Benny Terranova.
The only thing I want my hands on is more of your money.
Since this was a story about Vinny Terranova being seduced by the very thing that he was trying to arrest, I knew he needed to be a kind of a blue-collar guy. So I was looking at actors that could kind of come out of that role or that area. And one day, my casting director came in and said, Ken Wall. And he said, Fort Apache, the Bronx. Remember that movie with Paul Newman? And I did, but it'd been a while since I'd seen it. And he said, well, there's a movie called Purple Hearts you ought to take a look at. So I put this movie in, and in Purple Hearts, Ken is playing a doctor in Vietnam. And he's just incredible in the movie, I think. I look at it, and he's one of the most handsome guys I'd ever seen, and a really, really good actor. So I asked him to come in. And I remember he came in and he sat in this office and he kind of slumped in a chair and he threw his bag down and he kind of looked at me and I go, hey Ken, how you doing? He goes, well, I'm really pissed at you. And I go, why? I've just met the guy. He said, because I read your script and I really like it and I want to do it, but I don't really want to do a television series and I'm conflicted. And I was basically explaining to him how we were going to do this new kind of television story and how his character was going to be seduced and how the screenplays were really going to be about this guy's moral compass. That there would be times when he would veer and he would find himself sliding, the wrong direction, and his value system would be at stake. And that was what was going to be fun about the character, and Ken really responded to that as an idea.
Well, if you're not going to shoot me, sport, you better put the gun down. Spit it out.
Well, maybe I don't know what to spit out.
No, you don't know what I know and what I don't know. Which makes it real hard to decide just how clean you want to get. I'll tell you what I do know. I know you and your partner beat the hell out of Joey Romanowski. You did it for Steelgrave. You're on his path. Do you want me to keep talking till you don't have anything left?
I created a character named Frank McPike, who Vinny had no response to at all. John Banks had worked for me half a dozen times on different things. I was really aware of Johnny's talents and abilities, and he'd never played a good guy. And Frank McPike, even though he was a kind of a sourpuss, was a good guy.
Where is Steelgrave?
And I knew that John Banks, with that sort of punama, that face and that kind of droll delivery and everything, would be just great at playing this character, because I wanted Vinny's initial response to McPike to be negative. And then as the series went along, he warmed up to him. But at the very beginning, he just didn't like him at all. And that was the way we scripted it.
Good morning. Sailor Hardware, may I help you?
This is Agent 4587, day code, style section, 11087, ident procedure, D, fashion factory.
Hey, how you doing, Vinny? Welcome to Life with the Lifeguard. How was the house?
I wanted our lifeguard character to really be a guy that couldn't walk. I didn't want to hire an actor that, and put him in a wheelchair. I wanted a guy that was really in a wheelchair. The idea being that he was an agent who had been wounded in the field and now sat on a desk with a whole bunch of tape recorders and phone drops and basically protected the agents in the field. If they were in trouble, they could call their Uncle Mike, and there would be a code, and he would know that he needed to pull them out. So I knew who that character was, and we came up with Jim Burns, and he was just perfect. It couldn't have been any better. He had warmth, and he had likability. I was really happy with those three choices, and those were our central characters in the series.
My name is Steelgrave. It's on the door, it's on the foundation. It'll be the last word out of your mouth. You change a thing in my business without asking first. You're here to protect Patrice's interests. You do that. You put your paws on my interest again, and I'll personally crush your skull.
Well, Ray Sharkey is an interesting story for me because Ray Sharkey was an actor that I had been interested in for 10 years prior to Wiseguy. When I first became aware of him, he was doing The Idolmaker, a movie about a guy who basically was in the record business and made record stars like Frankie Avalon or Fabian, those one-name singers of the 50s. And you would see this movie on cable or on late-night television, and you would see Ray Sharkey playing this Idolmaker, and he was just riveting. And every time I would see the movie, I would come in and I'd say to whoever my current casting director was at my studio, I'd say, I want to have a meeting with Ray Sharkey. So now we're casting Sonny Sealgrave part. It's all the usual suspects. It's all the people that we've seen playing Italian mobsters over and over and over and over again. And I'm saying I want this show to be different. I want to put a hard edge on it. I want somebody we haven't seen. And lo and behold, I'm home one night and in the middle of this casting, and there's The Idolmaker. It's on again. I'm going, gee, if I could just get it. This guy would be perfect to be Sonny Sealgrave, So I come back in and I say, I want to meet Ray Sharkey. And he comes in, and he's this finger-popping, happy, funny, and he and I just have a hoot here for about 35, 40 minutes. He was incredible in this part. I can point to any episode, and you just see how just amazing he was.
I love you, Mama.
Vincenzo.
Mama, no, don't do this, Mama. Please, Mama, let me be with you. Please, I need you.
If you were going to be an undercover agent and you were going to become notorious, basically, and infamous as a criminal figure, how would your mother respond to that? And they would say, OCB would say, you can't tell your mom. You can't tell your mom. She'll be bound to tell all her friends at the beauty parlor because they're going to read that you were arrested, and she's going to say, oh, no, he's really an FBI agent. You can't tell her. It'll get all over town. And Elsa was just great because she had such a strength to her. When we saw her, we just kept writing her. Had we had a lesser actress, that part might not have been, as important. But she was so good and such a kind of a salt-of-the-earth type performer. She became really important to the series because she was the counterbalance.
Sit. This is it, Sonny. What am I looking at? If it's federal, it's the RICO Act. If it's state, it's the Malhouse Amendment. You a federal or a Jersey cop? I can't believe you're a cop.
The final confrontation between Sonny and Vinny is in this theater. Now, one of the things that David Burke is just wonderful at, he's just a great writer, and he's very good at ideological confrontations. And that's what this whole thing was an ideological confrontation about law and about crime. And
make this work for me. I can make a much stronger case. I could plead down to a year, maybe 18 months. Worst case, yeah, that's it. They'll try and extract the price from me, but they're too smart to take it to court. Jurors don't believe liars. Liars, yeah, you're a liar. Oh, and my pal, you are a major league liar. You've been lying for years. You don't even know what the truth is anymore.
Sonny, what about what you did to Patrice?
You gonna tell them about that? What about all those feelings you said you had for me?
Sonny, I feel for you deeply, but you can't run from this murder.
Patrice is gone, man. He's gone forever. They got no corpse. They got no case.
They got videotape.
That was what that last episode was about. It was a confrontation, a cerebral confrontation at the beginning between Sonny and Vinny over values.
Can't wait to get started.
I know how you get into a case when I have to twist your arm. The idea of the havoc you could create by genuine enthusiasm scares me to death.
You worry too much.
It's what I do.
Yeah, I know. Frank. Dead Dog Records. I love it.
One of the things about Wiseguy is that you get series occasionally. It doesn't happen all the time. You get a show that is just better than the sum of its parts. There was something about that mix, whatever it was, the music, from Mike Post, Everything was just better. We had great actors, we had great writers, directors, cameramen, two really great writer-producers, David Burke and Steve Cronish. And you get that occasionally, you know, it's just a very rare thing, and Wiseguy was definitely one of those times. It was pretty cool.
I wanted to do Wiseguy because I looked at the pilot, and the chemistry between Ray Sharkey and Ken Wall was so magnetic. And I had loved Ray from seeing him in Idolmaker, and I was up for 3 other shows. I was coming off a very hot show, Crime Story. I'd written the pilot and been on the first year of that, so I had a lot of opportunities. When I saw Wiseguy, I said, I've got to do this. And I came into this office. Peter Roth was president of the company at the time. And I had a meeting with Peter, and I said, you look no further. No one will do this show better than me, period. No chance, end of story, over and out. It's mine. I know this show. So the only question here is how quick can I have autonomy over it? And he got so excited by my enthusiasm, he called Cannell, rather than take a meeting afterwards and said, well, we've got the guy. To which Cannell said, what the hell are you doing in the office? It's 7 o'clock. Go home and be with your family. But the next day I came in and met with Steve. And it was, you know, I don't think I was as aware of it at that time, but the notion of being able to write arcs and to write deeper into character and not have to vanquish the bad guy at the end of 45 minutes was very, very attractive.
What do you get out of this, Vinny? I want to know. What do you get out of this? Another pin on your lapel? An upgrade on your pension? What are you trying to destroy me, man? It comes with your territory, Sonny. You want a recitation?
No one gets out of here alive. Open the doors for us to do what we wanted and the actors to accept it. And believe in it before they dismissed it. And there's I think in television, particularly when you're in the run of a episodic, there's a sense among actors that these writers aren't up to the skill of the actors. You get a lot of that. And there's a constant battle going on until the show is perceived as a West Wing. You know, it's brilliant writing, so who's going to argue with it? Well, we didn't have that on Wiseguy until No One Gets Out of Here Alive. Ray Sharkey and Ken Wall refused to do that episode when they got the script. They absolutely refused to do it. We had to fly Les Sheldon to Vancouver to rehearse it with them. You know, they came. The first response was they came in and asked me to change it, and I said, I'll quit before I change it. It's perfect. I will not change the script. And I called and screamed at Ray and Kenny, and they refused to do it, and it was bullshit, and it was too much language. And
God, oh my God. Who do you think you're working for, man? You want to talk drugs? Let's talk Agent Orange, LSD. Those are just 2 of the progressive efforts made on behalf of your friendly employer, Uncle Sam.
Les went up there and walked them through it and rehearsed it, and they suddenly saw what it was. And they got into it much more than I ever expected them to. And it was spectacular.
I have no idea what this is about, do you, man? This is about taxes, man. Taxes, money. Yeah, man. They don't like that I don't want to pay what they think is my share. My legal operations pay more than half the major corporations in this country. This is not about taxes. Then what's it about, man? It's about the core of yourself that cannot be excused by whatever it is about you that I admire. This is about the need in your life not to run rampant over other people's lives simply because your fire burns brighter. Hey! This is about the law, man.
And backtrack a little bit. In the last few episodes of the Steelgrave arc, there's a dynamic that this show had that I don't think other shows have experienced. Actors who come in to play the bad guys, generally, you know, they don't really want to do series, but they like the notion of coming in for 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes. And then they get enmeshed in the process, and they don't want to leave. And Sharkey did not want to leave. And he was poisoning the waters for everybody. You know, it's not going to be the same when I'm not here. You know, nobody's going to be better than Sonny Steelgrave. Who are you going to go after next? Kenny was freaking out. Everybody in the network was scared. You know, how are we going to possibly top Sonny Steelgrave? And then the first day of Daily showed up with Kevin. And there was never any question. It was the scene that Steve Cannell wrote.
It doesn't put me to sleep, but it makes me feel a whole lot
better. And some Fascination for the Flame when Mel Prophet calls Vinnie Terranova to his room for a late-night chat. It's that classic line, the idle rich are hard to entertain.
The idle rich are hard to entertain.
And there was a moment when he opens the door for Vinnie when he first walks in, and he turns from Vinnie and walks across the room and steps over an ottoman to get in his chair. And he throws his head back, and he is just, you know, he is milking it for all it's worth, and he's wonderful. And you're going, this guy's great. And Spacey blew them away with that scene where he's when he gets a phone call from his sister at the restaurant that she's been abducted, and he screams. That moment where he screams blew the crew away. So, you know, and suddenly Sonny Steelgrave wasn't an issue anymore. Kevin is a remarkable mimic. His Johnny Carson is as good as anyone I've ever seen. His Pacino is staggering. He called and said, "Can I do Brando?" I said, "Do whatever you want." He didn't call to change the script. He wanted to know if he could give it some inflection.
Elvis is leaving us.
Why?
He want to go home to Guido.
Who's Guido?
It's the mob. The outfit.
Mafiosa, capo di tutto, the capo, the Don Profito, kiss my ring.
Joan walked in the room and just blew us away by standing there. She was so beautiful and still is. And then she nailed the material. And we had a lot of actresses come in and read with hesitation. The show had suddenly gotten a buzz, and I'm sure agents were telling their actors this would be a good show to advance your career. You should do this. And then they'd pick up the script and go, well, this character is having an incestuous relationship with her brother. She's a drug dealer and an arms dealer. She's disgusting. Why would I want to play that? And you felt that in the auditions that the actresses would give you, that they weren't devoted to making this character something special. Joan came in and just nailed it.
No! We are forever. You and me, we're forever. Look at me! Look at me.
We always knew. We always knew.
Our poor handler and Jonathan Banks, Frank McPike, who was going, what about me? And we had to stop and think about that. And when the characters found themselves in Vancouver, McPike is sort of trailing after Vinny because it's a little beyond the pale of their work. It suddenly dawned on us, well, there's something we can do with Frank, too, and we gave him Lilla Warfield.
I'm dying to make love with you.
Dirty Little Wars is, of that arc, it's my favorite episode.
Now, I want an answer. How do you go from Medal of Honor to mercenary? At what point do you kiss off the nation for these dirty little wars?
It was an opportunity to reveal what the real reason Roger Lococo was doing there. And it was a chance for Roger Lococo to explain to Vinny how he viewed himself as in patriotic terms. What he was doing meant something for this country. And he was willing to fight dirty little wars to do it.
I don't see myself as kissing off this nation. I see myself as protecting it.
It made Vinny much closer to Roger. I mean, he became, in a way, a soulmate, because Vinny had been through that experience with Sonny Steelgrave, where, betrayal had its cost, and now Roger was actually being betrayed by Herb Ketcher.
You take care of Terranova?
Don't worry about him. He's got more problems than he knows how to handle. A sense of morality can do that to you.
Tracy Lords comes in. None of us look at the name on the list. And she reads, and we go, well, that's it. That's the girl. And Vicky Huff says, well, don't you know who that is? I said, who is it? Tracy Lords. Okay, that name rings a bell. Why? Well, she was an underage girl in porn films. Is there any reason we can't give her this job? Is she in the union? Yes, she's in the union. I said, well, she got it. She got the character. She's obviously, she's got the experience. She doesn't have a problem playing a prostitute, and that's what we need, is somebody who doesn't have a problem playing a prostitute.
Mr. Ketcher?
Herb.
I'm Monique Herb. Do you always keep it this dark in here?
Right now I do.
I had worked for a long list of tyrants prior to coming here. I'd worked for Michael Mann, who was tyrannical. I'd worked for Otto Preminger, who was tyrannical. And now I'm working for Steve Cannell, who's one of the nicest guys on earth. And it allowed you to go places without fear. I mean, you'd come out of an environment where everything you do is there's a little bit of fear operating, worried about how the boss is going to react, and that didn't exist here. It was just about, you can't wait to show it to the boss, because if he has a reaction, it's going to make it better, or he's going to really slap you on the back and congratulate you if it's done really well. for all the problems that went along with doing this kind of show, the thing I walked away with at the end of that season, after the show, is that you don't have to be a bastard to do good work or to get your way. And I was developing that reputation from, I guess, learning from the guys I'd worked for, and I always have shown a slightly different path.
You're McPike? Most of my life. I was Batman in the 3rd grade, but that seems to have passed.
Frank McPike was a wonderful guy. He was a good guy. He was an honest, straight-ahead, straight shooter.
All right, listen up. We're about to arrest the wealthiest criminal slime in America. They're fat, they're sassy. They have no interest in risking their lives to avoid the inconvenience of being booked.
He was a guy who sat in that patrol car or that unmarked car for way too many years. And, the coffee lids were thrown on top, and the stale donut was still floating under the seat someplace. But he didn't change. His moral fiber didn't change. He didn't change. He lived a moral game. He lived a very moral game. He was a good guy. He's a nice man.
Well, him is having a very busy day. Skirmish in Ducktown, dinner with the Chowder and Violin Society, and now a late date with me.
Won't you get me any coffee?
What do you want? I hate meetings after midnight in cold garages with guys I'm not partial to.
McPike's relationship with Vinnie Terranova was very adversarial. McPike, in the pilot episode, had made sure that the undercover agent had stayed in jail longer than he should because he thought he was dirty.
Why did I have to do the whole 18, Frank? Explain that to me.
So you ain't glad to see you, old buddy?
Oh, yeah, I'm all choked up, Frank. I've been dreaming about the smell of your lilac cologne.
The adversarial relationship ended when McPike realized that Vinnie wasn't dirty, that he was indeed a dedicated undercover cop. And it may start back with Nobody Gets Out of Here Alive.
Sonny!
Because he turns to me at one point when Sonny Steelgrave electrocutes himself and says,
I wish it was you.
I wish it were you. That's as much as of a powerful line it is, it catches you off guard, too. And I know, even though you know it's coming, even as an actor, it catches you off guard.
Yeah, well, I gotta go, Frank. I got a dinner with my producer.
You got what with your producer? I got dinner with my producer?
It's all right, Frank. Wanna come watch us record later? I'll leave your name at the door, okay? Oh, Frank, wear leather, okay? Love you, babe.
Kenny has great instincts for, and you may not agree with him sometimes, but about where that character was going, what he wanted to do, what the reaction was. He was really upset that there was an adversarial relationship between McPike and Terranova in the beginning.
You're supposed to wait downstairs. If they're casing this and you walk in here, you're gonna get made. Now, you just play things the way you want, don't you?
I want to be alone with them.
And it was important to him that there could be some kind of a bond where he could trust McPike. And for me, at that point, I was thinking, I don't need that, man. Come on, let's just go with what's written here. Let's jump that. As time went on, I think he was exactly right.
You're part of my family, too, Vinny. I don't want to see a member of my family hurt any more than you do.
It was important because it gave the relationship someplace to go. No One Gets Out of Here Alive. I remember my call was later than everybody else's. And I got there about the time that they'd been fighting for 3 or 4 hours. It's all supposed to be fake this and fake that. And I walked in, and I'd been around for a while at that point, and I looked at these two guys who were utterly and totally exhausted and a little cut up. They had fought and rolled around on that floor for 4 hours. And then I thought the scene that followed, I thought that was a wonderful scene. That the uncovering of the undercover and the admissions and who I am and where I am.
I want you to know there's a lot about who you are that I feel close to.
I think Ray Sharkey was one of the most giving actors that I've ever been around.
Hey, that belongs to me. Uh-oh.
Don't you push me. You don't know how close I came to letting him kill you.
And he would make the space for you. And he was right there with you to make sure you had your moment.
Steelgrave is my client.
His child should know that he was a magnificent actor, and totally giving to me. There were wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guest stars, and and these wonderful actors. Has there been another show that's been that blessed with that kind of star lineup of people who are about to be stars? But good actors, beyond stars, star schmar, wonderful, good, solid actors. It's not one of those designed or pre-planned things, but the commitment to it on everybody's part, and the people, and from producers to writers, directors, to definitely the crew that I worked with, to the actors, as crazy as some of them were. It was one of those times where all the right formulas, people, elements came together, and it worked. It was good. As the years passed, it was the three, that relationship between the three. That was my favorite.
I think I got something. You got a strike. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I don't believe it. I think I got something here. Get it, Benny! Come on, that's it. Come here, you little beauty. Come here.
Yeah. That one I've never thought about before. That was my favorite part of the show.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
My audition for Wiseguy was somewhat complicated. I hadn't had that much work in television. I'd done 2 episodics previous to this, and my agents had been trying to convince me that I had to take a trip to Los Angeles to get seen, because while I was building this body of work, people still didn't know who I was. I was a kind of a name without a face, and I was very reluctant to make a trip to Los Angeles and to go and look for a job. I just, there was something about it that profoundly bothered me, to sort of go to Los Angeles and be one of, thousands and thousands and thousands of other people who were there to do the same thing. So I just remember going through this remarkable series of arguments with my agents, and I finally compromised, and I said, okay, look, I'll go to Los Angeles, but I'm not going to look for a job. So I'll go and I'll meet people. You have specific people you want me to meet. I'll go out there. I'm going to go for 2 weeks. That's it. I'm not going out there to look for a job. And, of course, they thought I was just this insane, arrogant New York theater actor. But nonetheless, I flew to Los Angeles on a Thursday. Got there very early in the morning. And I traveled with my dog. I had a black Labrador at the time named Slate. I got to the agency, and they decided they wanted to take me around and introduce me to a couple of the agents that I didn't know, who'd never met me. And one of the agents was a television agent. So I came into his office, and we were sitting and having a chat, and he kept looking at me, and he said, what are you doing this afternoon? And I said, well, I'm actually going to go to the place where I'm crashing, and I'm tired. I want to take a break and really not start anything until tomorrow. And he said, can you just hang on, just don't move. So he picked up the phone, and he made a phone call, and he was like, listen, there's an actor. Can I go on for that too? Okay, yeah, great. So he says to me, will you go over to this casting director's office named Vicki Huff, and she's over on Hollywood Boulevard. Just go in there, and I just want you to meet her and maybe read something. That there's a series, and they've lost an actor, and they're in a kind of desperate situation. I was so reluctant to go. So I'm convinced I should go over. So I drive over to Stephen Cannell's building. Again, when I meet Vicki, we have a conversation. I read this scene, and I don't care at all about any of it. I'm tired. I don't want to be there. I don't want to audition for this thing. And then she said, could you just hang on a second? She picked up the phone, and she said, could you come back later this afternoon? I'm like, look, I'm tired. I'm going to go to where you call my agents, and I'm sure they'll organize something. And so they asked me to come back later that afternoon and meet Steve Cannell, David Burke, a bunch of other associate producers, and then I might have to come back later and go to the network. And I said, look, I've already said to you guys, I don't even want to be here. I don't even want to go on this audition, but if I'm going to go, I'm going to go once. So if the network wants to come over and see whatever it is that I'm going to do this afternoon, then great. But I'm not going to then go somewhere else and prove myself to the network. I'm not interested at all. And of course, everybody just thinks, what in the world is this guy's problem? That most people would be falling over themselves for the opportunity. But I'd never seen the series. I'm not even sure I'd ever heard about it. So I went over later that afternoon, maybe about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I read. And I remember walking into Stephen Cannell's office, and there was like a jury of 13 people. There were all these chairs, and there was network people, and there was producers, and there was writers, and there was associates, And again, I just could not have cared less. And so I came in and I did this reading, and they all looked very excited, and I was like, thank you, very much. I'm going to go sleep now, because I hadn't been able to crash at all the whole day. And I was just tired from what had been a very exhausted week in New York. So then I get this phone call at like 7 o'clock that they've offered me this show. And I say to my manager, they want me to get on a plane, Saturday, and start shooting this thing on Monday? I mean, this is insane. I don't want to be in a TV series. It's not what I want. So no, I said no. So everyone just flipped out. My agents flipped out. Steve Cannell flipped out. People could not understand at all. Stephen Cannell asked if I would come back to his offices at around 9 o'clock that night, because he wanted to have a conversation with me about my concerns and show me the last episode of the Sonny Steelgrave arc, which hadn't even aired yet. So I, again, just reluctant as anything, I said, oh, fine, I'll go in. So I came in at 9 o'clock, and we had a really terrific meeting and conversation in which David Burke was there, who was, as you know, the head writer. And they gave me so much assurance about the way in which they wanted this thing to happen. They brought me into a screening room and they showed me about 40 or so minutes of the Sonny Steelgrave arc. And I sat there, just taking it in. And, knowing that Stephen Cannell had a track record of doing a lot of television, and very successful television, I had admired, obviously, Rockford Files and Beretta and Baba Black Sheep and a lot of the series that he'd been involved in. But this is also the guy who produced The A-Team and some of those other shows that, that were more about car chases and action than they were about characters. What struck me so much about this Sonny Steelgrave arc was the acting was extraordinarily powerful. The writing was terrific. It wasn't about car chases. It wasn't about action. It actually seemed rooted in something else. And I was stunned, but I was also completely exhausted. And so after about 40 minutes, I'd seen enough. And I said, thank you very much. And they thought, I found out later, they thought, number one, they thought that I hated it. And number two, they thought that I'd fallen asleep. So I left, and I had a conversation that night with my manager, and I said, I was really stunned by the quality of the work, and I think maybe this is something that I ought to consider doing. How many episodes is it? What's the situation? So I got on a plane, flew to Vancouver. I went to a video rental shop, and I rented The Godfather, and I rented Scarface. I watched both of them on Sunday, and then Monday morning I started shooting. That was about as much research as I did.
Damn Paco. I got a guy in Sao Paulo who tells me that he sent up a bunch of greasers to get me. Death squads.
Doesn't that bother you?
Yeah, sure, it bothers me, Vinny, but there's nothing I can do about it, right? So
I'll tell you something that I'm just profoundly grateful for, is a conversation that I had that first weekend I got to Vancouver. I had done a production of a Eugene O'Neill play for most of the previous year with Jack Lemmon. And I remember all these times when Jack would sit around and he'd talk about the golden age of television. So I called him that weekend and I said, tell me, why is it that you and so many others view that time in television in the 50s as the golden age? What was it about it? Why? And Jack said to me, well, one of the reasons was because it was a brand new medium. So nobody had any idea what was going to work. And it wasn't commercially driven. And it wasn't driven by ratings. It was this new medium in which you could do anything. You could do comedies one week, you could do a drama, you could do a musical, you could take chances. You could, and this was the word that hit me like a lightning bolt, you could approach your work with total abandon. And I thought, total abandon. Now that's not a word I would normally associate with television. Not that good work can't be done, because that camera doesn't know it's a TV camera, it's just a camera. And that was literally how I decided to approach the whole series, was with total abandon. In answer to the question of, who was Mel Prophet to me, it kept evolving. I had a certain idea about where it was heading, but until you got script after script and really saw where it was going, what I know I liked about it immediately was he could be many things at many different times. When they started to see what I was doing, this sort of extraordinary eccentricity and bizarreness of how Mel was developing, it actually began to free them up in terms of writing. David began to write more complex material, and the episodes themselves got, very out there. Only the Toes Knows was on a scale of the most bizarre that I had ever read. it made absolutely no sense, other than the fact that he was getting shot up with this combination elixir and some other, homemade medicine.
Only the toes knows.
I don't know what in the heck it meant, but boy, do I get quoted that line a lot. People still to this day walk up to me on the street and say, "Only the toes knows." And I go, "Yeah, cab, give me a cab." There is no question that David Burke is one of the most remarkable writers and showrunners in television. When I would get these scripts, I would pick up the phone and I'd call him, and we had this really great relationship where I could, for example, and I remember, I think it was that episode, I had called him about a week into shooting the first episode, and I said, "Look, maybe it's just me, but Ken Wall looks like Elvis." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I just got to call him Elvis. So if you don't write it, I'm going to start saying it." And the next script I got, I started calling him Elvis.
Elvis is leaving us.
Then we started working in ways to sort of do impressions and sort of just have fun and keep it light and not all that serious.
The outfit.
Mafiosa, capo di tutto, the capo, the Don Profito, kiss my ring.
The idea that in a major network television series you'd have somebody spouting the theories of Thomas Malthus was pretty remarkable. And I also must say that to this day in my office in Los Angeles, I have the Malthus bust. It's sitting in a prime place of prominence. I'd always liked Kenny's work. There's a certain degree of humility that I'm not entirely sure he got enough credit for. Because how many actors would be willing to essentially step to the side of the frame to allow the guest stars to really emerge as much as he did and as much as the function of that series was? And, it was not a series driven by an actor's ego. And it was not a series driven by how much, screen time that actor got. In fact, I think Kenny rather enjoyed it when he wasn't working.
I have the clearest choice in the world.
He was always focused. He was always dedicated to it. He always knew his lines. He worked very hard. He worked a lot of hours. And he really cared deeply about the show. And I think that there's no doubt to me that a series or a movie or a play can only function at its highest level if the people who are at the top, and that means the producers and the director and the star, and there's no doubt that Ken was the star of that show, and I think he set the tone.
Come on. Oh yeah, we got a hitter here!
I think one of the reasons why Kenny had such a good time was because I purposely kept making comments that were wrong for baseball, and he just found this so funny. I remember he laughed that whole episode because that episode, I think, for me begins when I knock on his door and wake him up. I'm always waking him up in the middle of the night. And Ken didn't know that I would be standing on my knees, so he looked for me when he opened the door and then I was there. And so I would do things like that all the time just to crack him up. And we keep this stuff on film. I mean, there was just no question that we just, kept the film running. There's a lot of times in that episode where we're giggling.
All right, man. It's a dinger. 400 yards over the left wall. The crowd's going wild.
400 yards?
We had a blast out there.
Come on, Mel, I'm exhausted. Let's go.
Joan was not that experienced as an actress. She was nervous about the job. She was very excited about the opportunity. We actually spent a lot of time that first weekend, her and I, just going over stuff and talking about stuff and trying to come up with, even though a lot of it hadn't been written yet and what wouldn't be written or exposed in the series for a while about what their history was. We spent a lot of time trying to come up with our own kind of backstory. Her and I just remember all these sort of late nights in hotel rooms sort of going through what was their life like.
You promise?
Yeah.
You know what happens if you break your promise?
Yeah, grow a very long nose.
We did a lot of work on that together, and I think she worked very hard and she came off very well. She was just a delight, absolute delight to work with.
Roger, I want you in here now!
His master's voice.
I've been so pleased over the years to watch Rusty. He's done a lot of series. He's one of those staple working actors who is always around, always doing interesting stuff.
If you have a point, make it before I lose interest.
Your yearly income exceeds the gross national product of half the nations on this globe. What do you do with it?
Roger was sort of more dealt with as kind of like bodyguard, sort of muscle. He just abused the hell out of him. So we didn't have the kind of, depth and quality of scenes that they gave to Vinny and I. There was this sort of side story going on where he was doing lots of other stuff.
What are you suggesting, Roger, that we overthrow some banana republic?
Wouldn't that be something now?
I have great admiration for him. He's a good actor.
You have any idea the pressure I'm under? I got the oil shipments from the Gulf. I've got the laundering operation on the East Coast. I gotta try to stay alive without somebody sticking a knife in my back, and I gotta worry about where you are every second of the day. Hey, Benny, get in here. Come on, come on. How much do I pay you?
You can get spoiled doing something like Wiseguy because, you know, not every job that you ever get is with people who are so completely dedicated to making something unusual and different. It was an enormous learning experience. It offered me opportunities that I'd never had before. It opened doors that would have never been opened for me.
This is not over.
It was a really good show. It was dangerous. It was willing to break the parameters of what people expected. It was bizarre. It made sense. It didn't make sense. It was funny. It was tragic. It was a lot of things for a kind of nighttime television show to be. And I have to say, you know, there's two things that are true. One, people stop me on the street all the time to this day and talk about Mel Prophet. It is without question the thing that people first discovered me for. And secondly, if it weren't for this character, this writing,